Rebecca, Kevin, Mosante, Alex, Tyler, Mia, Brian, and all of us are... Learnalots!
Let's begin at the beginning with Sir George Somers and the well-known story of the Sea Venture shipwreck. But when Sir George Somers first landed on Bermuda, there were no houses, no roads, and certainly no traffic. It was a wild island paradise. Compare that with Bermuda today. The 1980 census listed the island as one of the most densely populated places in the world, with an average of 1,200 people per square kilometer. But supposing there was just a little part that had remained unchanged, what would it be like? From time to time we meet with Ruth because she always has the answer to our questions. And she has a supercharged super screen that could open all doors for us.
You know, Learnalots, there's an island in Bermuda that is a very interesting island. It's almost like an outdoor living museum. There are lots of endemic plants and trees there, and lots of creatures live there in peace. You can't go to this island unless you have permission. Once upon a time, the home for delinquent boys was housed there. David Wingate lives on this island and takes care of it. It's a very, very interesting place. Do you know the name of it?
Nonsuch Island.
That's right, Nonsuch Island. Well, why does it have such a name as Nonsuch?
Because
Nothing lives on it?
There's no other island like
That's it. There's no island like it, Nonsuch. I think you would enjoy a visit to Nonsuch Island. So let's put some information into the supercharged super screen and see if we can get ourselves to Nonsuch. Here we go. There we are.
Hi, Learnalots. I'd like to invite you out to Nonsuch Island to see the Living Museum. There's lots of exciting things to show you there about Bermuda's original heritage.
So here we are, sitting on the dock in Tucker's Ton, looking sharp in our new blue t-shirts.
Hi, Dr. Winky!
Dr. Wingate is a government conservation officer. He knows all there is to know about Bermuda's plants, birds, and animals. His work takes him island-wide as he keeps an eye on Bermuda's unique natural world.
Everybody's coming?
Yeah. People loading in.
I'm in the back. I'm in the front. Here, let's get...
Yeah. Where you put?
It's a perfect day for a boat ride. The sea is calm and clear, but we still have to wear life jackets just to be on the safe side. It's a tough job being a Learnalot, cruising out to the islands on a beautiful day, but someone has to do it, so it might as well be us. We're getting near the island now. Dr. Wingate moors his boat to this wreck before going ashore. Nonsuch is not like other islands where anyone could drop an anchor and visit the beach. Special groups such as ours have to book their visits in advance and arrange for Dr. Winky to be their guide. There's a sign on the island to make sure that everyone knows that this is a private nature reserve. This is how Sir George Somers must have felt sailing off through the trees to discover a whole new world.
Okay, we go over this way.
Dr. Wingate took us to his house and we sat on the steps while he told us about the island.
Okay, kids, we're on Nonsuch Island today, and what do you know about Nonsuch Island? Do you know anything about it at all?
There's nothing else like it.
Well, that's a good start. It was named after a famous palace in England back in Elizabethan times, and there isn't anything like it because this is a nature reserve that's very different from most nature reserves. This is a nature reserve in which we're trying to restore the Bermuda that existed before man landed here. In other words, all of the plants and birds and animals as they were found when the first settlers came. And that's quite a challenging thing to do, because since man has been on Bermuda, he has changed it so drastically by introducing so many new plants and so many new animals and birds, that the original animals and birds have been reduced through predation or competition until now most of them are very rare. Have you heard of the cahao bird?
Yes.
Well, the cahao bird is one example of a bird that was really abundant when the first settlers were here. But because of the introduction of rats and cats and dogs and pigs and all these other problems, they were exterminated on the main island of Bermuda, where they used to nest in soil burrows under the forest. And they're now reduced to tiny little islands like that one that you see out there. You see that island just off the porch here? That's one of the islands where the cahaos have been able to survive, because out there the cats and the rats and the dogs can't get at them. And I'm going to show you today some of the things we're doing to try and help the cahao come back. Another type of thing we're doing is restoring things that were exterminated on Bermuda altogether. And this morning we're going to be looking at a type of snail called a topshell or whelk, which the early settlers found in abundance on Bermuda, and they found it was good to eat. It was actually, we have a couple of examples, and here's a small example right here, and I'm going to show you some big examples as well. Where did the big examples go? Could you see if you can find them up on the porch table up there? Could you want to go and fetch them?
No,
and then we can have a look at them. Well, this is an example of a species that was found in abundance by the first settlers on Bermuda in the intertidal zone, and the early settlers collected too many of them. See how big they are, they're really good to eat, and exterminated them. And so one of the things we've tried to do is reintroduce this shell from down in the West Indies, where it still survives. And you all know Teddy Tucker, the treasure diver, right? Well, he brought some of these shells back from the Turks and Caicos Islands a few years ago, and so we reintroduced them on Nonsuch Island. And one of the things we're going to do today is go down and see how they're doing, see if we can find a live one, because these are the dead shells from the original population, and for a whole century or more, nobody could ever find any live top shells on Bermuda. So it wasn't until we reintroduced some live ones from the West Indies that we got them back again. And these are a protected species as well, so I'm going to tell you a little bit about the do's and don'ts if you encounter these as you're exploring along the shoreline. So that's basically what Nonsuch is all about.
Is it true there was a boys' school on the island?
Yes, indeed, that's correct. It used to be known as the Nonsuch Training School, and it was a reform school for boys, and they were taught all kinds of useful trades here. And that school went on to move to Paget Island in 1948. And before that, the building that you see in the background here, do you know what that was built for? Why this building is out here? Well, years ago, there used to be very bad yellow fever epidemics. That's a disease that's transmitted by mosquitoes, but they didn't know it was transmitted by mosquitoes in those days, and so they were rather afraid of this disease because they didn't know what caused it, and they thought they had to quarantine anybody that caught it. And so they chose the most remote island they could find in Bermuda, which was Nonsuch Island, and any ship that came in with yellow fever victims aboard was quarantined out here, and all the people had to live here until they either died or got better. And later in the morning, we're going to go and have a look at the little cemetery where some of the people that were quarantined out here died.
Dr. Wingate, what are these?
Well, that's an interesting artifact, isn't it? Those are the devices that we use to protect the cahao birds from longtails. And do you know why they need protection from longtails? Because I told you that they used to breed inland under the forest in the old days, but man's cats and dogs killed them in that area, and the only place they could survive is the little offshore islands out here. But these islands don't have any soil to dig the burrows, and so the cahaos have to go into the cliff holes. And you all know that that's where longtails nest, isn't it? They nest in cliff holes. And so the longtails were going into the same holes the cahaos were trying to nest. The only problem is the longtails are bigger and more aggressive bird, and so it would kill the baby cahao chick and take the nest over for itself. And so we had to figure out a way to prevent that from happening. And so what we did is we developed a simple device, it's like a special doorway at the entrance to the cliff hole. And it has a fixed hole size that you see here, an elliptical shape, And that's just big enough for the cows to squeeze through, but the larger longtail can't get through. And so that way the baby cows are protected, and cows can come and go and feed their chick, but the longtail can't get in. We're going to go out and have a look at a cow burrow in a while, and you show how they fit in there.
Are you done? Can't the longtail get their head through that hole?
They can get the head through, but the cow burrow is very deep, as you're going to see in a minute. When the cows increase on these little tiny islands, they'll spread back onto a larger island where they can start to dig soil burrows again. And that way their population can really build up to large numbers without people having to provide all kinds of artificial devices like bafflers and artificial cement burrows and stuff like that.
So will they be coming back here later on?
But it'll take a long time. This is a very long-term project. You know how long I've been working with this project? 30 years. I look the part, right? I'm getting a little gray around the whiskers here. But I've been working on this island for 30 years, and so the forest that you're going to see today as we walk around is actually trees that were planted out of gallon cans 30 years ago. There wasn't a single live tree on this island when I started the project, but now we have a regular forest down in the middle of the island, and one day I hope I'll have cows nesting under that forest again.
The introduction's over, and now it's time to set off and explore. First of all, we went inland. Dr. Wingate knows the island so well that he can identify each plant, insect, and bird.
The spruit we have here is very interesting because I mentioned that we're trying to replant all of the original native plants of Bermuda, but you know, when the first settlers came here, there weren't a great variety of native plants because they had to cross an ocean to colonize Bermuda, so there weren't too many kinds. And there was only one kind of edible fruit in all of Bermuda that the first settlers found, and that was the prickly pear, which you have a right example of here. That was the only edible fruit that the first settlers found, and so this is one of the things that we're trying to grow out here. And I've got a really nice specimen growing here that's not only fruiting but flowering right now. Everything else that we have, like bananas and pawpaws and citrus fruit and all that, had to be introduced. Who knows anything about the night heron?
Never heard of it.
You've never heard of it? Well, you're going to hear a lot about it soon, because this bird was especially reintroduced to Bermuda back in 1976 to 1978 for the purpose of controlling land crabs. Now, you all know the land crabs, right? We can see land crab burrows all over Nonsuch here. But land crabs are a bit of a pest in lawns and golf courses because they eat the grass and they create holes where you don't want them on a golf course. And so it was desirable to have some control. And also I discovered when I started this project that the land crabs were so abundant that they were eating all of the little rare plants that I was trying to grow under the trees. And it turns out that we discovered from the fossil record that there was a heron that used to eat the land crabs in pre-colonial time, but the early settlers killed them all off. And so what I did is I got this same type of heron from America, where they still nest, and I reintroduced them to Bermuda, and now we have one of the largest nest colonies right out here on Nonsuch.
Whoa! Hey kids, it's me, Professor Mervyn Nutty! Whoa! Wow. Too much sugar in my diet or something. Ooh, I feel really good. Now kids, got a really exciting experiment for you today. Check this out. Ordinary balloon, ordinary household water bottle or cola bottle or something. Watch this. Air escapes back out. Why? Observe the hole. All right? Now, let me try this again. Kids, try this at home. Now, why didn't it blow back out again? Observe the second hole, where my finger is. This space trapped in between the balloon and my finger. What is it called? Huh? Air, that's right, air. This is all to do with air pressure, kids. Now, kids, amaze your granny, amaze your auntie, amaze your cousins, sisters, uncles, brother-in-laws, former roommate, or whatever you want to amuse, okay? This is a great experiment to amuse your parents and make them think you're a true scientist. Now, watch this. This can also be a very fun experiment. Oh! 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 Good thing I was wearing my safety glasses, kids. This makes a really good pop gun. Okay. Well, that's today's experiment over, kids. I'm Professor Urban Mervin Nutty, the star of the entire Learnalots. See you next time, kids. Later.
Next we headed for the coastline. There are a number of different habitats on Nonsuch, and each is very different. This is where the longtails nest. Alright, Dr. Wingate, how long does it take for a longtail's egg to hatch?
They actually, both the cow and the longtail take a very long time to rear their single egg. You know, they both lay just a single egg. And in the case of the longtail, it takes 43 days to hatch that egg, which is more than, it's almost 4 weeks or more. And the chick takes 2 months to be reared before it flies to sea. So they're usually hatched in May, and they don't fly to sea until about cup match time.
Mr. Wingate, is it necessary that you have to provide nesting holes for longtails?
Well, out here, in fact, it isn't necessary because on all of the Castle Harbour Islands, there's so much cliff and so many erosional holes that meet their requirements for a shaded nest hole that there are actually 500 nesting pairs accommodated out here. Nearly all of the nest holes are full. But on mainland Bermuda, these days, the longtails are in trouble because, unfortunately, a lot of people have built houses on the shoreline and have destroyed the natural cliff holes. And so there's a unique opportunity there for people to build nest holes into the cliffs, or say if they have a retaining wall for a terrace or something, and they build a new wall out of cement block, they could leave holes in that wall as they build it, and all they have to be is about 15 inches diameter inside with a sandy floor, and just a nice big entrance hole, you know, about 6 or 8 inches diameter, and longtails will colonize them, and then you can have your own longtails right there on your waterfront terrace. And because longtails aren't aggressive and don't have any fear of people, it's the perfect thing to do. You can enjoy the beauty of these birds coming and going, and they live in their hole and mind their own business.
After that, we set off up the hillside. Of course, I decided to be clever and take a shortcut. This would never have happened to Sir George Somers. You and Ellen again was more sheltered. This gave Tyler a chance to do his special dance. I don't think Sir George Somers would have done this either. Dr. Wingate took us to a special hide set up for bird watching.
Landed, ready to drink.
Okay, be quiet.
And you can see it drinking. Look, so just watch, and she'll dip down and get a drink of water.
I think you should be in there.
Does this freshwater pond look natural to you?
Yes.
But I'll bet you'd be surprised to know that this is a completely artificial pond. It was made artificially, and I'll explain how it was made. That's right. This is a sample of the plastic liner right here. That real thick stuff is called polyethylene. And it has to be, what you do is you excavate the basin, and then you lay down the sheets of polyethylene and you cement them together with a special machine that welds them together. And then, in order to make the pond look natural, so it's not like a swimming pool, I had to put the soil over the liner. So I put about a foot depth of soil over the top of the liner. And then, how does the water get in there?
What is it?
Huh?
Rain. Overflow of the rain.
No, just rain. We have a heavy rainfall in Bermuda. We have nearly 60 inches of rain a year. And so gradually the pond fills up with rain.
Did you see that dock land? It went
Yeah. The ducks come in here to feed and to rear their babies. Did you see the baby ducklings in there today?
Yeah. They're right over there in that little
So why do you suppose I built this pond then? Why do you think I want to build a pond?
wild ducks and herons can live there?
Exactly, so to create the habitat for water birds. And there's a whole host of water birds. This is the natural habitat for freshwater birds. But it's not just the mallards and the night herons that live here, but there is a whole host of migratory birds that visit Bermuda every year, and about 60 different kinds of water birds. And that's why I built this bird blind here, because when the migrants come in, they're very wary, unlike these birds, which are used to me. And because the pond is very small, if I came this close to the pond with all you kids and the migratory birds are in there, they would panic and take off. But if we sneak into this blind and just look out through these windows, they can't see us. And then we can get good views of them. And sometimes you can see them do all kinds of things. They're feeding, or they're preening, or courtship rituals. And they're not even aware of my presence in the blind. So I can study them and learn all kinds of things about their intimate life history. If you can get up there.
This is from Hurricane Emily. This fell down from Hurricane. That fell down from...
No, this fell down long before Hurricane Emily, actually. This was blown down in a storm in 1967. But it was long since dead by that time. This tree would have died in about 1951. But this is one of the old giants of the forest here. Okay, kids, now we've been to the rocky coastal habitat, and you've just had a look at the freshwater pond. And there are at least 3 other different kinds of habitats on Nonsuch. And now we're standing in one right here. What would you call this habitat?
Forest.
This is inland valley forest, that's right. And this is actually a valley where we're standing and where the little yellow fever cemetery is. And the soil is actually 5 foot deep in this valley, because when it washes down the hillsides, it collects in the bottom of the valley. So this is where the trees can go tallest. And believe it or not, there wasn't a single live tree here when I started this project 30 years ago. Try not to break any of the vegetation down here. Well, one of the problems in trying to restore the native forests out on Nonsuch, kids, is that all of these exotic plants that man has introduced to Bermuda sometimes go wild, and they get very aggressive and competitive with the native plants and outcompete them. And one of the most aggressive plants in Bermuda, which I'm sure your parents know all about, is what we call the Mexican pepper or Brazil pepper. And these plants get out to Nonsuch by way of starlings, which are an introduced bird that feeds all over Bermuda in the daytime, and they come out and roost on Nonsuch at night. And they've been eating the seeds of this plant on the mainland, and when they come out here, their excrement drops the seed on the ground and it germinates. And so these plants start growing all over the place, and if I didn't take them out, they would very quickly take over and overshade the native plants and kill them.
Can you tell me the difference between native and endemic?
Yes, I've been banding these big words about, and so it's about time I define them for you. Well, native plants or animals, say of Bermuda, would be any plant or animal that managed to colonize Bermuda by itself without man's aid. And that's the distinctive difference, that man didn't help it to get to Bermuda. And so that's what we mean by native. And the same plant or animal may live in another part of the world, but it also got to Bermuda all by itself and colonized. Now, if it was on Bermuda for a very, very long time, then it's subject to evolution, and so it begins to diverge and become different from the original colonizer. And that's when we call it endemic. That means it's come to be unique to Bermuda. It's only found in Bermuda in that particular form.
Traveling around our beautiful island with the Learnalot program, we sometimes come across locations that are in need of our attention. Here we are today at Orange Valley Road, and it's disgusting. Bike parts, washing machines, water tanks, even old lunch bags are left here. Let's do something about it. Don't litter, let's clean it up. For the Learnalot program, this is Tony Trash.
It was such a beautiful day that we decided to cool off and take a swim. Nonsuch is one of the best beaches in Bermuda, and today it was all ours. Then we went back to Dr. Winky, and he told us some fascinating stories about whales.
What we have here is the skeleton of a beached whale, and the species of whale here was the sperm whale, one of the big whales that were hunted for their oil back in the old days, and actually to some extent even still today, I'm sad to say, because all the whales are getting rather rare. This whale was apparently hit by a ship and was threatening to wash up on a beach in Bermuda, so it was towed to Nonsuch Island, which is a nice out-of-the-way remote beach where we could do the autopsy and rot down the skeleton to get the bones for the collection in the aquarium museum. And so that's what we're doing here. These are the big vertebrae from the backbone. Imagine when a big animal has a backbone with vertebrae like that, huh? And the only thing you don't see here is the skull, because the skull has already been cleaned up and that's gone ashore. And you know how big the skull was? It was 10 feet long. The whale was 30 feet long, and the skull was 10 feet long with the big spiky teeth in it.
On Nonsuch, we found plants, animals, insects, and birds living peacefully, just as they were before people came to Bermuda and disturbed the natural order with buildings, traffic, noise, and pollution. Of course, we can't go back to those days. But luckily, we have places like Nonsuch Island and people like Dr. Winky who care about the environment and who could teach us all about how to observe, enjoy, and preserve the beauty of the natural world.
Thank you, Dr. Winky! Rebecca! Kevin! Sunday! Ryan! Tyler! Mia! Brian! And all of us are...
Watch next month when the Learnalots learn about summer fun in Bermuda. Don't forget, new blue Learnalot t-shirts available from the Department of Community and Cultural Affairs, only $12.